Calculation is the most important skill you have to develop in chess, and it decides 99% of all of your games in chess. Today, together with I am Jonas, we are gonna share our calculation process so that you can use exactly this one in your own games, finally bring your chess to the next level. Hi guys, and welcome to the Journey to Grandmaster, the place where you can improve every single aspect of your chess game. So we have a guest today. We have International Master Jonas Hager. Hey, hi, Jonas.
Hi, and yeah, I'm very happy to be here and share and talk about the calculation process in chess because it's so crucial, and I want to give some insights with Biafini.
So the way it's going to work, we are going to solve this high-rated chess puzzle together. We have taken it from Lead Chess, and we are going to discuss our calculation process because so often it seems like it's obvious for you what the best move is, what the first move of the variation, but what the most people are missing is seeing the opponent's opportunity. And that's exactly what we are going to focus today, because that can actually bring your calculation process to the next level. So it's why to move here. Feel free to pause the video for a second and think about it first, because then you can compare your thought process with ours and of course find out the right solution. It's going to be so much more useful. All right, now we can start our work. What do you think? It seems like you always start with the checks, captures and threats first, and in this case we have a nice opportunity to take the rook with the check, and we both cannot just ignore it. It's screaming at us, let's take the rook. But we don't do it immediately. We think what our opponent can do and what we are going to do afterwards, right? So what are your thoughts?
Yes. So the first thing I see as well is like the capture on c8, but in general, I think it's a good thing to get a broader overview over the position, like consider what is an alternative. And as a general rule, I think you should always have two options at least. So even though this move looks tempting, you should watch out a bit if white has another very serious option. But actually, I don't see that many forcing moves for white. So queen c8 will be on the top of the list. Apart from that, there is not that much. Also, we should pay attention to black's threats, and it's obviously checks and captures again, and he's threatening something like queen c2, king moves, and queen on f2 mate. So that's very serious, and that also introduces us to the first problem, because when we take on c8, the king will move, has some options, and then we cannot take the g8 rook, even if it would be unprotected, because then we would be checkmated. So that's kind of the issue, and we need to think about, can we get the queen into safety and protect the checkmate at the same time?
Exactly. I feel like the material is equal right now. If we can grab a rook, then stabilize the situation, we are just winning. We have a rook out.
Yes.
So I'm thinking we are taking the rook, the king goes somewhere, we are giving yet another check so that our queen is secure, and then we play something like rook c1 to defend against that queen to c2 threat. That is why it's crucial to understand what your opponent wants to do. Not only think about your own plans, because most of the players do it their own way. They are thinking they're playing alone, and then they're so happy to take the rook. They're thinking, okay, how to continue the attack, that they absolutely miss their opponent's counterplay. So what I'm thinking, queen to c8 check, king goes g7, f7, I don't really care, e7, then I can take the c7 pawn, the king goes somewhere, and then I play rook c1, covering the c4 pawn if I need that, although the queen is also defended, covering the c2 square, so there are no checks, and then it seems like I'm good to go. What am I missing now?
Maybe you're missing queen b3 in the end, because it renews the threat. But actually, I would say it looks quite good, but maybe there is some alternative in playing rook to d2 instead of rook to c1, because rook d2 immediately covers the b2 as well, and once black takes on d2, it might still be enough to win, and there would be less counterplay. So that's a serious alternative to consider, and we need to figure out, can we keep the whole rook, or is there too much counterplay with queen to b3, and we must instead play rook d2, giving up back the exchange. Also, we should maybe consider if we have a third option to protect against queen to c2, maybe there is something prophylactic, like playing just bishop g3, guarding the f2 pawn. So when you slow down a bit, you might come across some options you haven't seen before. So yeah, that's dive into that one, yeah.
Yeah, that principle of slowing down is incredibly important. I have learned it from Jakob Agard, one of the best coaches in the world. And he's saying that when you are 100% into the variation, you are thinking what's going to happen, and you are only looking at the most forcing lines, you might miss something very simple, like this bishop g3 that actually guards the checkmate. If black plays queen to c2 check, yes, your rook is under attack, but you can just play king to e1. Then I don't see any checks coming. And it seems like, yeah, it's perfect for white. But also with my line rook to c1, I have actually missed that move queen to b3. And so it's so essential to think about your opponent's opportunities, not only in terms of the most obvious ones, like checks, like this queen to c2 check. Yes, I covered that with rook c1. But then you have to think, okay, what kind of opportunities my opponent has apart from that? And of course, you start with these other checks, captures, and threats. There are no checks. There is nothing reasonable to capture, but queen b3 is not a subtle move. It's attacking the b2 pawn, which is like threatening checkmate in a few moves. You cannot ignore that. And if you miss it, you might get into serious trouble. So before you make your move, it's essential to check what the response might be.
Coming back to this idea with bishop g3, it might look decent at first sight, but maybe there is some more counterplay in the end, but I'm not sure about it. I was thinking knight c3, but I just saw that c3 square is still covered by the b2 pawn, so that doesn't work.
Yes. Do we have enough activity if our opponent... So queen takes c8, king g7, queen takes c7, c7, king to g6, let's say, we play bishop g3, queen to c2 check, we play king to e1 to defend our rook, and then just queen takes b2. Now black wants to deliver so many checks, and knight c3 is coming, like you said.
Yes, that's a thing which I also was a bit worried about, because if we play bishop g3, king e1, we are not that well coordinated and counter threats may come. Maybe we have counterplay with rook h1, threatening queen h7 first before black launches the counterattack, but it's not so clear, I guess. Also, bishop g3 is quite a slow move, and we let the queen penetrate to c2. So maybe we should really think, can we avoid that the queen is entering there? So my intuition would be always start with the move you are most optimistic about. And for me, that would be probably this rook c1. But then I would need to figure out what to do after queen to b3. And if I cannot do anything there, then my second most optimistic move would be rook to d2, because I keep the queen out of c2. And I think I'm more optimistic that that's going to win the game in a more clear fashion. So after rook c1, queen b3, I don't see anything, do you?
Yeah, me too. And I'm thinking it's interesting that you say rook d2 is your second most optimistic move, because for me, I wanted to save all of the material if I can, and bishop g3 is an idea to do that. With rook d2, you give up a little bit of material, but you simplify the position a lot, because this knight is like the biggest threat. It's standing there in the center, controlling so many squares, creating so many threats. And if you can give up a little bit of the material, you still have a whole extra bishop, which is more than enough to win a game. But then your opponent only has one queen to attack, which is not that dangerous. If he plays knight takes d2, king takes, queen to b3 there, attacking the b2 pawn, which is, yeah, inconvenient. We can just play rook to b1, and then everything is under control, up to the point where he brings his rook into the attack. That would take a lot, and it's not that dangerous for us. Yes,
I think talking about rook d2, it's a lot about preventing the counterplay, because a bishop is also enough to win the game, an extra bishop. But still, we need to figure out if we kill really all the counterplay, because also after rook to d2, there is maybe queen to b3. Because then we threaten to take the rook and then the b2 pawn. And if we need to go passive with rook to b1, it kind of feels a bit shaky to me.
Okay, well, a practical approach, I would say, if we are 100% sure we have to take that rook, because otherwise our opponent is attacking and we don't have any advantage, we can do that, because we see that we are not losing our queen. We have queen takes c7 check afterwards, and then we have a better look at the position, because we are 2 moves ahead. So it makes sense to make this move that you are 100% sure, and then look from there. What do you say?
Yes, I absolutely agree. We don't really risk anything, because if we don't take the rook, we are just worse. Because yeah, black is the pawn up, and so we take it. And also, I think it's very important that we don't need to calculate all lines with a king on f6 or a king on g6. We just play the first two moves, which are basically forced, because now we don't have any options other than queen to c7, saving the queen with a check. And then black needs to make up his mind where to go with the king. And now we are sure that king is on g6, so we don't have to double calculate it. We know the king is there, and now our calculation starts again, looking for the options, and maybe we see some more options than we saw before, because we have a clearer vision of the board now.
This video is brought to you by Chestnut. Chestnut is making amazing chessboards that allow you to play online from a real 3D board. They have high quality chessboards, nice looking chess pieces, so that you can enjoy and having fun playing it. Chestnut boards also have so many training functions that I absolutely love to use to my training, and it helps me to improve my chess every day. This is, for example, Chestnut Evo. I love to use it for my trainings, but they have so much to offer you depending on your preferences and your budget. And the best part is you can just use the promo code Journey to Grandmaster or click the link in the description to get a big discount on all of the Chestnut products. So one thing I have thought about, if I play rook g2 and you want your queen to b3 strategy, then you kind of need at least two moves to create a threat. Like you have to play knight takes d2 and then even queen takes b2 to create that threat. So maybe I can use that time and create a threat against your e6 pawn. But now I realize that my c4 pawn is also hanging. So if I play rook d2, you go queen b3, I play queen d7 or e7, you have queen c4 check, which at the same time protects that e6 pawn and creates a check. It's very inconvenient, so I don't want to go for that. So if I play rook d2 and you go queen to b3, I guess I have to play something like rook b1 to deal with this threat. But I agree that it's quite passive there.
We have one more idea, I guess. If rook d2, queen b3, we might also consider bishop to f4. It looks a bit crazy at first, but sometimes you need to be open to such non-obvious ideas, because sometimes they are just best, and it's very painful to miss them at all, because once you
So what's your point if I just take your rook there?
Then the point is that I might play rook to h1, threatening mate on h6, which is unprotectable if there was not queen takes c4 with a check, trading the queens, which is a problem. So
checks always start with a check.
It's very important, but it's almost working. I think it would be a good idea if this queen c4 wouldn't be there. So, but apart from that, I like the fact that knight d2 doesn't come with a check, so we might have some time for queen e7 or some stuff like that, but we need to pay attention. Queen takes c4.
Okay, so what's wrong with bishop g3? Let's think one more time about it.
Yes.
Queen c2 seems to be the
only try.
active move. King to e1 we have to play, otherwise we lose the rook. And then, do you have any alternative apart from queen takes b2 for black?
Maybe pawn to f4.
Okay, to open up even more.
Yes, because white...
I guess I have to take it.
You can also think about rook h1. I think white has a lot of options there.
Rook h1, because I immediately creating checkmate. Exactly, that's a very good point.
So queen c2, king e1, and then queen to... B2. Oh, maybe also knight g5 is an idea, trying knight f3, but I think the king can hide there.
Yeah, it's not that dangerous because you don't have a follow-up. Sometimes people are like obsessed with this idea to have a perfectly looking piece, and oftentimes it's the knight, but then it is there on f3, but you don't have a very good follow-up.
Yes.
Although I just noticed that the rook would be hanging.
Like it would actually threaten mate, yeah. Knight f3, king f1, queen d1.
Yes.
So it might be dangerous, yeah.
Knight g5 and knight f3. Have to be aware of that.
What to do?
Then I like it less. Yes, that's a very good point. So you have to look for your opponent's resources. It's not that simple as it might feel at first. Bishop g3, queen c2 check, king e1, and knight g5. It's threatening a knight f3 check immediately. We don't have any checks. unless we can prevent, like if we just go away with the rook, let's say rook a1 or something, we don't really have a lot of squares for the rook to go. Because even if rook a1, black can play queen takes b2, and then the rook is hanging again. And I don't see how we can improve that. The king cannot magically disappear, and otherwise we cannot protect the rook, just go back to d1. But then at least black has the same queen c2.
At least, yes, that's right.
And otherwise, this knight f3 is a huge threat, which I don't see any solution.
We have one idea against knight f3, like queen c6, trying to sacrifice the queen and then take on f3 and then have a discovery with the g3 bishop, but I think it's just not enough because the king can always go to f7 and protect the rook, and the queen on c2, it's better than rook and bishop, even if white has 1 or 2 pawns on top.
I have another sacrifice in mind. When you play bishop g3, queen c2 check, king e1, knight to g5, I play rook h1. Now you play knight f3 check, I go king f1, you take my rook, I play king g2. And I'm threatening to take your queen and the checkmate along the h file.
Yes, but I have knight e1 check.
That's a good point.
You might sacrifice the exchange there, though.
Yeah, but it's not like...
But it might also just be losing because maybe black does not even take back the exchange, but plays queen f3 check. King goes to g1,
f1,
rook h8. But if king on g1, then we have bishop h2. But
yeah, it feels
then
like...
it's rook h2, and it's at least perpetual at the very least.
Yeah.
So that is a good idea, but unfortunately, I think it's not working for white. So that would mean that we more or less...
So now we dismiss the move bishop g3, we think it doesn't work for us.
Yes.
Then we are left with two choices, rook c1 and rook d2. But rook c1, as we have mentioned before, queen to b3, seems like b2 is hanging tremendously.
Yes.
And I don't see any good solution.
Yes, I just see rook d2 as the best thing I think we can do. And queen b3 is the only try, because if black takes the rook immediately, the king will just cover the b2 pawn himself, like knight d2, king d2, queen b3, king c1. It's completely over because white consolidates. If there is not even another try. And if queen b3, I think we had rook to b1, but I think it's not even the only move. We could also play something like rook g to d1 so that we are able to take back on d2 with the rook. And that stabilizes quite a lot. And in the long run, we are piece up. d6 is already hanging, queen e7 on the way. So that looks actually like the best, I think.
Yeah, I definitely agree. So the point is, if you have a lot of extra material, but your opponent has the initiative and creates some dangerous threats, you want to sacrifice or to give a little bit of material back just to stabilize everything and maybe exchange his attacking pieces so that his attack is over.
Yes.
Let's see if we are correct. Yes, we have solved it perfectly. And I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was very useful for you. Let me know in the comments if you have found that move rook to d2, because it wasn't that simple. In the beginning, it seems like it's very obvious, like that's a beginner's puzzle, but you see that you actually have to pay a lot of attention to your opponent's counterplay.
Yes, thanks for watching. And it was a real process. We didn't know anything about it. We came across all the struggles you face, and you see how difficult it can be, because we first thought we found a new idea, bishop g3, killing it all, and then we saw some resource for the opponent, and that's extremely crucial in calculation, that you are aware of those resources, that you don't get over enthusiastic about one idea you spot, but that you take care, look for options, not only on move one, but also later. And yeah, just be aware of the dangers and you will manage your way, control the situation, and find the right way to go through.
Make sure to take a look at the channel of Jonas, because he shares so much about his thought process there, and you're going to learn so much. Now, the real challenge is how you actually apply this thought process in your real game when you play against a real chess opponent. Well, in this video, we have played a game against each other and we have shared all of our thoughts live, so you know exactly what you should do from the very first move till the end of the game.